hello, chocolate lovers. Big Nigella Lawson from the Whittaker.
From the what?
From the Whittaker chocolate ad, where she's like, hello, chocolate lovers. Anyway, Toby's traumatized by that ad because he's always been into Nigella Lawson, and she has obviously had a bit of work done because she's super rich, but her voice, she can't hide the fact that she's aged in her voice. And so it like immediately desensitizes him because it goes...
One word review of this ad.
Decrepit.
And what are we actually here for today?
We are doing a retrospective, and this is our first one where we have both already previously seen the film, because that's the way we're going to do it, because that's how we decided. So we're going to do one that Rob hasn't seen, one that I haven't seen, and then one that we've both already seen, but it's been a while since we've seen it. And our first movie in this pattern is going to be The Help. Movie starring Emma Watson. No. Emma Stone, the other one. Octavia Spencer, Viola Davis, Allison Janney.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Jessica Chastain. So that's a few. And it is... Do you want to talk about what it's about? Because I've already done a bunch of the intro.
Yes. So it is based on a fiction book from 2009. Set in like the southern states of the United States during the 1960s, specifically 1963. And it's basically about a lady played by Emma Stone who writes a book from the perspective of the...
I want to write a book from the perspective of the Help.
From the maids that are all African American, because she wants to represent their struggles.
Yeah. And she wants to be an author.
I think a lot of people know this film. It's very famous. You know, has been famous since it came out, and it got a bit of a rebirth in 2020 when everyone started watching it again on Netflix. Yeah, it became...
Did it?
Yeah, it became Netflix's like most watched film because of reasons.
I mean, and we'll get into this. I can understand that because I used to watch it a little bit as like a bit of a comfort film. So, Rob, you can start because I've decided you're going to start.
Oh,
I think I started last time.
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Um,
What is your one-word review? Tell us so that we all know.
my one-word review is Kennedy ? Which
I'm sure there's multiple meanings to it.
really just one.
Okay.
Alright, so
Okay, never mind then. Mine is Crisco.
on that basis then, why don't you start with your history with this film?
Yes. Okay. So I watched it when it came out, like everyone else. I really enjoyed it, like everyone else at the time, and I then got it on DVD and I watched it a lot. This is what I meant by comfort movie. Like, it's a whole story. It has a nice beginning, middle, and end. It has a nice, like, satisfying ending. It's a happy ending. This is the movie that won Octavia Spencer her Oscar. And I kind of think as well put Viola Davis back on the map. And on top of all that, also I think made Emma Stone stand out as more of a serious actor. Because previously to this, she'd done like Spider-Man and
Spider-Man was after.
Oh, well, she'd done Easy A. Was that it?
Easy A was the year before. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like Superbad and stuff.
Yeah.
And Zombieland.
Yeah.
So this was her first foray into like prestige acting, where it's like, ooh, this girl has some talent. And yeah, I had a relatively positive history until I recently found out that apparently it's quite problematic. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, no, I think I saw it at the time, and I think I just came away from it being like, oh yeah, whatever, 2-hour Oscar-y movie, that was in and out and done, and I'll never think about it again.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way.
Yeah.
It was on the list of films to
2.5
watch.
hour Oscar
it
movie.
was
I
long.
forgot about that.
Yeah, I think it was just one of the movies that I wanted to catch because I wanted to be across what was nominated. I watched it, thought it was like, yeah, all right, lots of good actors. Pretty much all of them except Bryce Dallas Howard has won an Oscar now, which is a shame because she's very good.
Emma Stone?
Yeah. For La La Land.
Now, as
yeah,
like, I
now,
thought you meant like at the time.
Yeah, no, like every big...
Has Allison Janney won one?
For I, Tonya.
Did she win? Fuck. I
Yeah.
completely forgot about that.
Yeah. Other than just appreciating that it was well acted, well shot, and relatively well directed, and it was a film that functioned, I didn't really have an opinion about
Did
it
you think
emotionally.
Octavia Spencer deserved her Oscar?
Um,
I think so.
I
She's the
mean-
best part of it, which is
Yeah, I mean,
she's the best part of that film.
Yeah, I think she just deserved it in the same way that, like, you know, most Best Supporting Actor, Actress nominations win. It's just they've got, like, the showy role that has a bit of heart in it, and they've got, like, the funny lines.
So,
you know.
yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, but I didn't see anything that I felt like I hadn't seen in a bunch of other performances of the same type. But again, no bad performances are in this film.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I couldn't fault it for its technical prowess. I hadn't thought of the film in, like, nearly 10 years, and then I heard that it was being watched after all that in 2020. And my first thought was, oh, that's embarrassing. Like, that being the movie that people decided to watch now that they're thinking about race.
Right.
Yeah, I thought like,
oh, sorry.
You were getting your 2020 tragedies mixed up, weren't you?
No, not that. It's just I totally, this is really bad, but I totally, like, I think so much happened in 2020.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really? That's the movie people went to? People were like, yes, racial injustice.
That's the movie people went to, yeah.
That makes, I mean, unfortunately, it kind of makes sense.
It makes sense.
From a white person perspective.
Which is the problem.
Yes.
Which is the problem.
Yes.
And
That's
think
not what they should flock to, but I can see them being like, oh, this will not make me feel bad about myself, but it'll still make me think about racial injustice.
Yes. I think that I still cannot fault the performances or the, you know, cinematography or the production design, the period detail.
Yeah, it's a very well-made
It's a well put together movie, and that's why I think it just cleanly passes through you, because it's so inoffensive from a technical level.
Yeah.
Narratively speaking, I think I would have to, in terms of how it deals with its subject matter, I would have to, like, place it kind of in the same kind of embarrassing category as, like, stuff like, not quite as bad, but Green Book, Driving Miss Daisy.
I think you're talking about two Best Picture winning films.
Yeah, they're both so embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I
should also, before you go any further, we should both preface, obviously, this is an entirely unexpert opinion. As two very white human
people,
beings.
yeah.
Two Italians. So, I mean, like, and also, for those who need to know this, you were born in South Africa, but you are in no way, like, African-American, African, like, you are white. I am white, we are both white.
We are definitely asterisk. We both are not qualified to be, you know, properly speaking on this issue beyond just,
Yes, so this is purely just our own opinion and, like, film and creative, but obviously completely uneducated, unexpert opinion. I just want to make people
if you want
understand.
the proper expert opinion, maybe speak to Spike Lee. Just from my perspective watching this, I found it to be a little cringy and
white saviory. You can just say it's white saviory.
Yeah, it's white saviory, but cringy and disingenuous. A lot of people believe that this is based on a true event.
Really?
Yes, a lot of people think it's based on a true event because the movie's called The Help. It's based on a book, and in the story, she's writing a book called The Help about the maids. So people think it's autobiographical.
The book about The Help is
it's a common misconception, which is why
people are stupid.
Yeah, and it's like, but I don't think the film does much to dispel that notion. I even remember the marketing of the film kind of was making you sort of believe that it's based on true history, which is...
I think it's based on, no, because there's a difference between true events and a true story. The true events that happen in the film, the historical events that happen in the film, all the way through to the assassination that we kind of like peripherally witness, they're all true, they all happened. Yes, also... the segregation element, the laws, all of that is true.
Yeah,
all of that
the
is true.
history of the
but
setting
the
is
characters don't exist. Jacksonville exists, and that I'm sure similar things were happening at the time. But specifically, this story, Skeeter and her family, and all of the
the writing of a book outlining the maids did not happen.
Yes, and like all of them do not exist.
No, and that's my problem.
Yeah.
Because
I mean.
Yeah,
why does it have to be a true story? 12 Years a Slave also doesn't exist.
No, it does.
Oh.
12 Years a Slave is a true story.
Django doesn't exist.
Well, that's a completely different kettle of fish. But in the point of The Help, the Kennedy moment, it's framed as this, like, you know, big, powerful thing. And implicitly, it is like, oh, Kennedy's been assassinated, and oh, he was a champion for civil rights, which he was, kind of, you know, for the time. And it's like this sort of, it's a moment that kind of springs a few of the characters into their moral progression a little bit. You see Kennedy's picture on the wall, and it's kind of a sad moment. I'm thinking, if you had to pick, if this is a fictional story, you could pick any point during the Civil... Why don't you do Dr. King's assassination?
I will admit, I had a bit of a Mandela effect. I remembered it being his, because they do talk about him in the movie.
But like the death of Kennedy is the
Well, yeah, but I remember it being the death of Martin Luther King, and then I watched it and I was like, oh, it's Kennedy. Yeah, which I admit, that was a weird choice.
But that's my point. It's like the film and the story itself, and I haven't read the book, but it just seems like that it's deliberately skewing it to be in that kind of fluffy, white saviory context, as opposed to actually being about the maids themselves. You know, you're not tethered to any true story here. Why go out of your way to make the story more removed from the actual perspective of who it's about? So I was finding that very uncomfortable.
The movie's told from Aibeline's perspective. The entire thing is narrated by her.
She's narrating it. It's not her arc, though.
But it is.
It's Skeeter's,
what are you talking about?
Arc.
What are you talking about? It's not her arc. When the movie begins, she's working for the people that treat her badly. She's always lived a very internalized life. And she's kind of doesn't have any purpose, right? Beyond these children that she raises. And then by the end of it, she has the power to A, stand up to her boss, B, decide to just go out into the unknown, C, she's written a book, she's stood up for herself. Well, she has. I mean, Skeeter did the editing and whatever, but she is they even say she's the one that they thank at the end in the church. And she even says pretty good writer, already sold a lot of books, she's already got that talent behind her. And she's had essentially a bit of an epiphany by the end. All of the characters have their own arc.
I think the reason why it feels slightly disingenuous, to me at least, and I get all that, is because the film, it's very Aibeline heavy in the first act and a half. By the end of the film, the major kind of cathartic wrap up is focused on Skeeter's bravery and her willingness to do something. She has the scene with her mother where she's like, you're so brave for what you did. And then Aibeline gets the kind of coda in the church where they're like, oh, good job.
But she has literally the final scene.
I mean, she has the final scene, but it's not really her story by the end of it. It is very Skeeter dependent in the back half, which is kind of where things wrap up.
Which is interesting, because that's not the parts I'm paying attention to at all. I'm paying attention to either Aibeline parts, and I'm paying attention to the part, I can't remember Octavia Spencer's character name. What's her name again?
I don't remember that either.
Minnie.
Yeah.
Minnie. I'm paying attention to Aibeline and Minnie's arcs. That's what I'm paying attention to. I think it's because
the most, for lack of a better word, powerful moments in the film relate to Skeeter's feelings of losing the woman that she was brought up by,
disagree.
Which is her maid.
That's
what motivated her at the beginning, finding out that the maid that raised her was
I wouldn't
fired,
say they're the
and
most
then
powerful.
that has the big moment at the end revealing what actually happened.
See, for
it
me,
was all wrapped up in Skeeter's.
No, my most powerful moment of the film is actually the end, where she's like, "Ain't you tired, Miss Hilly? Ain't you tired?" It's such a fuck you moment, and it's so that to me is the culmination.
The way that the film is structured, though, the way the film is structured and directed,
I think that's the culmination and most powerful part for Skeeter. But I don't think that's the most powerful part of the film. I think there's two.
It's okay, but in terms of the film's structure, it is focused more on that.
I would disagree. I would say there's 3 extremely powerful moments of the film that make the film what it is. Obviously, the eat shit moment. That is iconic. That is the one everyone always thinks of. Then the moment I mentioned at the end. And the other moment, the moment that gets me crying and welled up and holy shit, is the moment where all the maids are in the house. That, to me, are the three key moments of the film. They're the ones that always stand out in my mind.
I think the thing that also maybe is just making it difficult for me is because from a historical perspective, and I have to bring this in because the film isn't trying to be like a alternate fantasy, like say Django Unchained. It's giving the impression that all these maids are like, you know, scared and a little weak-willed, and they're needing that push to talk about their problems. Whereas historically speaking, these maids were all too happy to tell anybody who would listen about the hardships they were going through. They didn't need someone like Skeeter to come in and be like, I promise you I'll make it good for you. They didn't need any pushing. They were like happy to rail against who was mistreating them for years. Like they had enough happening in real life to do that, like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X, like Rosa Parks, you know, like those three.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the other one.
Yeah.
Well, and I agree. Like, don't get me wrong. I agree. I think that this is what I mean. This is why my one-word review was Crisco. Like, in the way that she talks about it, obviously it's an important part of her whole story, but also it's like a comfort product. And I'd say this is a comfort movie. And a lot with comfort movies, they're not always the best movies, and necessarily they maybe should have been made in other ways, right?
That's why I think for me it feels like that, you know, Skeeter is still like the crusading hero of this story because she was the one that had the mission. She was the one that had the inciting motivation that kicked the story off.
But I would also
she
say
was
she had
her
the
inciting
least to
motivation.
lose.
Her inciting motivation, you know, was the thing that had the biggest wrap up, the big flashback at the end. And I know you're saying that what was happening with Aibileen was more powerful. That's because, you know, it was a bit more. It's a more of a genuine story. But the way that Taylor focuses his camera and focuses his performance and focuses the script, there is more time given to Skeeter and what's going on with her. There is more narrative structure of centering.
I'd be interested to actually see. I don't know if there is more time.
That's how it feels to me. Because like Skeeter's moments are like the big, you know, catalyst, inciting incident, midpoint.
But I'd also say
climax.
she has the least to lose because it's like she doesn't even really like her friends in the first place.
Like
she
she's got
gets
the
with a
least
guy
to
for what,
lose.
like a month.
Yeah, and it
then,
turns out that he's an arsehole, you know. But
then she gets a job.
But see, this is why I've got a problem with the movie. Because yes, she has the least to lose. I don't really feel that bad for her. And the movie positions her, at least in my view, as the hero.
But then again, I don't think it doesn't wrap up in that like happy of a way. You know, it actually doesn't even have that happy of an ending. You know, she still gets fired as the last thing that happens to her, and it's not like all the, you know, awful racist housewives were tearing down their outside toilets and being driven out of town or anything like that. Like, and Skeeter leaves, which like, okay, now they have more self-confidence and Minnie's happier, and Abileen's probably going to retire or with what money she has, but it doesn't, at least it doesn't have this giant like, we fixed it ending, you know? If anything, all it really did was cause some scandal in a small town.
I mean, I would immediately point to, you know, Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, which is set over a day in like one neighborhood and with like a handful of characters.
Let me pose a question to you that is potentially problematic.
Yes.
Yes. However, movies like Do the Right Thing have probably less of an entrance for the audiences that aren't watching those movies naturally, by which I mean non-marginalized audiences. And to help shift the balance of power, like it's not enough. And I think that's where the white savior complex comes from. Is this movie, the reason this movie exists? Yes, it did blow up in 2020. Why? Why didn't people blow up Do the Right Thing? Why didn't they blow up Selma? Why didn't they blow up 12 Years a Slave? Well, the reason they didn't blow up 12 Years a Slave is because that movie's really, really fucking difficult to get through.
It's brilliant as well, though.
I know, but you're not often going to sit down on a Sunday night and be like, oh, you know what I'm in the mood for? 12 Years a Slave. And that's my point. This is my question. Do we need films that act as in-betweens from movies that don't deal with it properly at all the way through to movies that actually tell the right story from the right perspective, like Do the Right Thing, like Selma, like Black Klansman, from the perspective of the people who should be telling that story? is there a place for films that are in the in-between?
What you're saying in theory makes sense.
Yeah.
The problem is that having that mild, these normal audiences who aren't running out to see or to, you know, discover Do the Right Thing or watch Black Klansman or Selma, then with the mild existing, the one that is just going to make them feel fluffy and nice and good about
They don't go
themselves,
seeking
and it lets
the
them
old.
off the hook, that's where the conversation ends for them. So I don't actually think it is starting a conversation at all. It's ending it in the wrong, misled place. So I would say, in the long run, The Help and films like it, like Green Book and like Driving Miss Daisy, they haven't helped.
We'll get to the ratings.
I think you should go first.
Oh, fuck. This is a hot soup for me. Leave me alone. It's a low hot soup, but it is still a hot soup for me. I just like it. I don't know why. I know it's wrong.
Well, it's totally.
And I fully recognize it, but I do really enjoy it.
Let me just before we go into my rating, I just want to reassure you. The fact that you enjoy this movie does not make you a racist, because you're not. Okay, like, you enjoy it because it is a nice,
it's heartwarming,
warm
and it makes you feel
film.
good.
Yeah, it's got great performances. It's well made. Cinematically speaking, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
So I cannot fault you for saying that it's a hot soup, because so many people do. It's on IMDb's top 250 films of all time.
That's true.
So I mean,
I'm not the, but then again, IMDb isn't exactly the database of balanced mental acuity.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the fact that you have given it a hot soup is fine. No one's going to cancel you.
Okay.
Me, on the other hand, I am going to give it a hot garbage, because
Really?
Yeah, because
does that land us in Socks at Christmas?
it lands us in Socks at Christmas.
That seems good. That seems like where you want to land for this.
Yeah, I think the reason why I gave it a hot garbage is because I couldn't get past the fact that I just wasn't engaging with the characters and the story and the themes because of all the problems I was seeing along the way.
I think that this really showcases how we watch movies. I am such a story person, and I'm such a in the world of the movies person, and you are so much more of I feel a themes and a character and historical context person. So that makes sense. So Socks at Christmas. Look, it is a movie that deserved a retrospective, because when it came out, it was amazing, and now it's ooh, so it's good to.
Think it was amazing.
Generally,
the world did, yeah.
Generally, it got nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and it won some. So 1-1, but it got nominated for a bunch. Anyway, with that, that's our retrospective, and our next one goes back to one that Rob hasn't seen. And I want you to say right now to the camera, Rob, that you're not going to watch it until we're about to film this video.
I may or may not.
No.
I may or may not.
No.
I may.
No. Don't. You will not watch this.
Basically, the film we're about to watch, the reason we're going to watch it is because it was discovered by my partner, and then subsequently by our friends, that I had not seen what apparently is required viewing for anyone in the millennial generation.
Correct.
Which was Camp Rock. I still plead not guilty to that. It came out in 2008. Your boy was busy watching...
Did you watch High School Musical?
Yeah, but that was years before. But in
Was it?
Yeah, it was. It was 2005. In
3
2008,
whole
I was
years.
busy watching Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and I was seeing American Gangster and fucking Slumdog Millionaire, and I was going through the back catalog of
He was
film
that
movies.
kid.
I was that kid, and Camp Rock was a straight to DVD TV movie. So I'm sorry, but me seeing that poster, not a film, that poster in a Video Easy, back in 2008, and it wasn't a cinematic release, I was walking right by it. I'm sorry.
Methinks thou dost protest too much. Anyway, so we're going to do Camp Rock. That'll be a much easier film to talk about.
Will it though?
Thanks for taking a break with Clean Slate.
Goodbye. Okay.
Why do you always walk off?